Welcome back to another edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley of Irish Illustrated. We're joined by John Bryce of the Football Scoop and Irish Illustrated, coming off a bye weekend. But boy, it wasn't a bye weekend for Alabama, Tennessee, USC, Michigan, and Missouri, because they all lost, and that's good for Notre Dame, up to number 11. Is that right? Number 11 in the most recent AP poll. Uh, that's great. At the end of the day, Notre Dame just needs to keep winning games. And obviously, in the number 11 spot, they're in a good position to just keep moving up if they keep winning. Stanford this weekend. We'll get into Stanford in a little bit here, but we talked to Marcus Freeman and went over a lot of self-scouting stuff and a whole bunch of injuries. Tim, you want to jump in and start talking about those? We'll cover them all.
Yeah, I wanted to say Notre Dame fans from the 1980s were one Miami 22nd rally short of having the perfect weekend of USC, Michigan, number one Alabama, and Miami losing, and Army, Navy winning, and local people, IU going undefeated as well. So that would have been a dream had Miami not come back on that one. But the injury situation, I never expected Rubio back right now, so I don't think it's not surprising. If he was back, I thought he'd be a one-play guy. It's unfortunate he still listed as questionable because, as we said on instant analysis, questionable has meant out. Faison is good news, though, because I thought that was another 3-week situation when you saw him get rolled up and, previous ankle injury as well. So that's great. I don't read Flanagan not being on the depth chart, I think, is just clerical, and he's probably not going to play as questionable anyway. But Josh Burnham being back and healthy, that bye week's probably pretty big for Burnham and for the defense as a whole, because now they can have five guys rotating at a spot where they wanted five guys, both defensive end positions total, but they're missing their two best guys for the rest of the year. So it's important that they have that rotation now.
Yeah, I think it's very much needed. And with Rubio, again, there had been some optimism that he might even be back by the end of Louisville initially when the injury occurred. Now maybe we'll get a slightly clearer picture of whether or not that questionable could be upgraded to probable or something over the course of this week. Who knows? But they need him back. They need him back to get some snaps in this 3-game stretch before the next bye week. I just think it's critically important that they get him some game action before the closing stretch of the season, which should be the defining stretch of the season for Notre Dame. And then Cooper Flanagan, really unfortunate. We've detailed at length how much faith and belief the staff has in him, and how much they truly believe he's a star waiting to emerge. And I would just say it's really unfortunate at the tight end position. Like, injuries happen, injuries are happenstance. We heard Marcus Freeman address that today, but the tight end position particularly has been ravaged by injuries now, really 3 years in a row, from Mitchell Evans to Kevin Ballman to Eli Raridan. To now Mitchell Evans still coming back and getting better and better each week, but now Cooper Flanagan appearing likely to miss another game. It's just unfortunate that at a position that, when healthy, can be as good as anywhere in college football, Notre Dame doesn't know what it's like to have a fully healthy tight end room right now.
The good news is that at the tight end position, Mitchell Evans with the week off, Marcus Freeman discussed this. He should be really ready to go full tilt. Christian Gray also back in the lineup, so he needed that weekend off. Sam Pendleton suffered a concussion, but he is expected to start. Ashton Craig had surgery on his knee. Boubacar Traore is out, and it was interesting we were aware of this. This was something that was going to be discussed with Marcus Freeman, but he volunteered the information that CJ Carr has an elbow injury. It was sustained in practice. He, of course, is a scout team quarterback. It isn't often that you hear that the scout team quarterback is banged up, which means there was some level of physicality that led to that, which is,
He was injured by a teammate. Yeah.
he was injured by a teammate, and that isn't something that we hear a whole lot about. But
He's famous, so you got to hear a little bit about it. You're going to ask
yeah,
about it.
no, exactly. And it's not like CJ Carr was going to play this year or is not expected to play this year, but I don't really think that is the point. Did I mention Billy Schrauth? He's among the questionable for the game, which I think when the injury first occurred, the whole thought was, can he be back after the bye week? But he's a 320 pounder, and it's just that much more difficult for a high ankle sprain. I believe it was exactly what he suffered. So we'll have to wait on him. Other news, guys, from Marcus Freeman. Go ahead and jump in.
I think just back to Schroth, it'd be nice if he pulls a Burnham this week and plays 4 or 5 snaps so he can start against Georgia Tech. You'd like to see him dressed and ready, questionable, like Josh Burnham was a couple weeks ago. It's tough to go right back in and just start in that Georgia Tech game. I think if you're just out. Now obviously he gets to run around a lot less than Josh Burnham does as a right guard. But yeah, I asked Marcus Freeman about if they could use Riley Leonard intentionally a little less. I mentioned QB counter because they run it so often in QB power. I probably should not have offered the part about I know he makes his own decisions on the read option. I just think for 7 games, Riley Leonard's going to get hurt again, and that's a problem when you run him. If you have to, does he have to lead your team in rushing attempts for Notre Dame to make it through this season? Can he lead your team in rushing attempts and have that's 2 questions. Does he have to lead your team in rushing attempts? Can he lead the team in rushing attempts and make it through healthy through USC? I find it hard to believe because he's been hurt twice, or at least once.
No, I would say twice. Like the eyes don't lie, and we saw that everything changed after he got the wind knocked out of him or whatever it was, and we saw a difference in Northern Illinois. We saw a difference in Miami, and we even saw a difference in Louisville after he absorbed rough hits. So it's a great question by UTO. It's a very valid point. He is a weapon. He's an asset.
He's got to be a weapon, but
yes,
you know,
he's got to be a weapon. But you can't fire the weapon every snap. And that's just the way of it. And I'm trying to walk a fine line there, not use a really bad analogy or whatever. But anyway, he's got to play. He's got to play effectively. How much does Notre Dame continue to grow its offense? Can Notre Dame continue to grow its offense this bye week and this period coming out of what we all agree was for the first quarter, Riley Leonard's best quarter as a Notre Dame quarterback. And in the fourth quarter, he led a drive that Mike Denbrock called beautifully and Riley Leonard helped execute beautifully. Can Notre Dame build off of that? Can Notre Dame continue to evolve its offense so that it does take some of the pressure off Riley Leonard? We know, I think all of us now at this point know Riley Leonard well enough to know his mindset is that, yeah, give me the rock every time. He's like Jeremiah Love in that whatever it takes to win, he'll do it. Just like Jeremiah Love told us in preseason, I want to be the every down back. So I'll be better at pass block. I'll do this. I'll do that. So that's their mindset. That's an admirable mindset. But for Notre Dame to have a chance to be a playoff team that envisions advancing in the playoffs, you have to make sure Riley Leonard's healthy.
Yeah, a couple things. Jeremiah Love's blocking against Louisville was sensational. Number 2, all this talk about how much Riley Leonard can run. And I agree with you, Tim, but it puts Mike Denbrock in a tough situation. He's a real weapon in the running game, but is he thinking in his head, okay, I need to space out his carries a little bit more? It's a difficult situation.
My whole thing is, Tim, 21-3 against Stanford, you cannot run QB power every time.
It's
2nd and 10.
I agree, and I'm sure that is in his mind, and that'll be part of the game plan. Other things that we talked about, I asked about 3rd down, self-scouting. I mean, it was a little bit self-explanatory by Marcus Freeman when he said that you need to get in 3rd and short, not 3rd and long.
Yeah.
And I get that, but and I understand where he's come from because he's talking about doing things a little bit differently on 1st and 2nd down in order to put yourself in a better 3rd down situation. Marcus was asked about, Coach Freeman was asked about Max Hurleman. And, he really, and Marcus Freeman's right. He's a key member of the team, as is a guy like Justin Fisher, a local guy who is on special teams. I don't know that he's quite as key as Max Hurleman because Max Hurleman's good. He is their best punt returner, I believe. And so they need to continue to do that. I don't know if we put a fine point on the Burnham thing. He's actually listed at both defensive end and the Viper position. And he has played Viper before. We mentioned this in our incident analysis after we talked to Marcus Freeman. So that's good. It gives them a little bit of flexibility there. Tim, you asked about Jadarian Price. And you know what? He made a good point. I mean, they sat him down against Louisville. Well, they sat down Audric Estime against Navy last year too.
I hadn't thought about that because I know they sat down Audric Estime after the UNLV fumble, but that's because he fumbled against Stanford to really lose the game and then fumbled again early. So I forgot about last year. Yeah, that's if you're going to sit Estime against Navy for fumbling, that's got to sit Price for fumbling in that situation. And he was incredibly loose. That looked worse on replay when you watched him carrying the ball. I'm sure they saw that on their iPad and thought, They have iPads now. I don't know if you guys know that or not to watch.
Yeah, they do. We do know that, and absolutely, Dylan McCullough can see that instantly, even if he's shielded from it from his sideline view. Other comments about Logan Thomas sounds like real promising prospect. He did a lot of studying the playbook when he was injured in the spring. He had the shoulder, correct? He had a shoulder injury.
Yes.
And so he came ready to play this fall, and he's been good. And I think we'll see more of him, mainly in a pass rush situation. He doesn't have a lot of bulk to defend the run, but he helped. I know he had a really strong quarterback pressure against Louisville, and so they'll continue to use him just like they will Leonard Moore, who will give up his starting spot or give his starting spot back to Christian Gray. But we're going to see a lot more of Leonard Moore. Can't say enough good things about what he did against Louisville of all teams. That's a real quality wide receiving core, and he had 76 snaps. I know we talked about this last week, but really, really impressed with him. Moving on to Stanford, I had an opportunity over the weekend to watch them against Virginia Tech and went over all of their key games. I didn't go over the Cal Poly game. I didn't think that it was necessary for me to rewatch the Cal Poly game against Stanford, but this is we mentioned it in the instant analysis. This is not a very good football team when they don't have their starting quarterback, Ashton Daniels. Tim, you knew him when he was a kid.
Yep.
Growing up in Buford, right? Buford,
Yep.
Georgia. You're good friends with his dad. And I don't know how injured he is. And I did not actually find the play where he was injured. I think it was at the end of the third quarter this weekend or last weekend, I should say, against Clemson. He did not play. They had Justin Lamson in his place. Lamson with an M. He is an awful quarterback when it comes to throwing the football. They don't want him to. They don't want him to throw the football. He's very dangerous in the red zone.
Right.
They will continue to use him when Ashton Daniels returns, but they don't have a passing game without him. And that's why I asked Marcus Freeman about, what are the things that you have to worry about when they actually have their trigger man in the game. And he talked about the motions and the things that they do. And wider splits can always cause some complications for opposing defenses as well. But Stanford is, I would say they're better. I think they can do more offensively with Ashton Daniels in the game. That Alec Iomanner is really an outstanding receiver. He played. I picked this up in Phil Steele's preseason book. Like people, well, why didn't Notre Dame recruit him? Because he played 5 games in his last 3 years of high school. But you wouldn't know it watching him play wide receiver for them. And I do think defensively, they've got some players. The guy that I wanted Notre Dame to get in as a transfer was David Bailey, their defensive end. But I don't.
That was almost tampering. You wanted him so badly, Tim.
I know, and apparently he had no inkling to leave Stanford.
He doesn't listen to us, I guess.
No, he didn't, but he should. Tristan Sinclair, linebacker that Notre Dame recruited. I liked him coming out of high school. I love the name of wide receiver Ismail Cece, who does some good things for them and is now a good complement to Iomanner. But I don't want to get too deep in them, but boy, I spent a lot of time on Sunday watching Stanford football, and they're better. They're certainly better. But we can't take anything for granted with Notre Dame football. Notre Dame versus Stanford in Notre Dame Stadium. We know there are no guarantees there from 2 years ago. Marcus Freeman pointed out that Notre Dame was behind by a point in last year's game before things really started kicking in. You guys thoughts on Stanford, or should we'll go into questions and wait till Thursday to really dive deeply into them?
I think Notre Dame's getting Stanford at a good time. And I don't mean just Notre Dame's bye. The bye was obviously helpful with injuries, but Stanford's been beaten up a little bit now. That was a really big win over Syracuse for them. Traveling back home, traveling to Clemson with the weather delays, losing to Clemson handily, coming home, having Virginia Tech put it on them without Daniels in there. They have some pieces when I like the idea of using the 2 QBs there.
It works.
Absolutely in the red zone where it can work. Yeah, I don't mean alternating QBs, but in the red zone, you absolutely need Daniels involved though. They have nothing without it. And I don't remember the Notre Dame defensive matchup against Stanford's offense is just, it's an astronomical win by Notre Dame. This is the last one. I would just say, if this game is close in the fourth quarter, it's an absolute failure of preparation. if this game is close in the fourth quarter. Every other game, I think going forward, I could see it possibly being close entering the fourth quarter. I stick by that they're so good on senior day, they'll kill Virginia. But as Tim has pointed out, Virginia's a little better than we thought they were going to be.
And, full disclosure, Marcus Freeman admitted that they spent a little time working on triple option Army Navy.
Yes. Yeah, you have to. You can't have 3 days for that. Yeah.
No, you have to do that. And I will say, again, something observed over the course of the weekend was that Stanford's had some shifting along the offensive line. The two starting tackles, I meant to check. I will check on injuries or situation. I don't know if it's a case of that, but they changed. There's two starting tackles, and I want to see if I get this straight. One of their guards is now the starting center, because their starting center was not very good in the first game of the year that I saw against TCU.
Hey, one of Notre Dame's guards is the starting center too.
Exactly. So, JB, what else you got, bud?
I agree with T.O. that I think they're getting Stanford at an overall good time, especially when Alec Alamanor is the key to their offense, and Notre Dame's secondary is as good anywhere. We saw Notre Dame's secondary perform admirably, even without Christian Gray. As noted, I think they'll be so much better long term because of Leonard Moore having to play 76 snaps in that game. Now they get Christian Gray back.
I just think, yes, I completely agree. This needs to be a game that Notre Dame systematically handles. We've rarely seen Notre Dame do that this year, to the just tidying up the point about Riley Leonard and trying to find a way to be up 21-3 so that you don't need to run QB power. Well, we haven't seen that this year. We haven't seen the consistency. Whether the coaches tell you they're going to use Riley Leonard as much as they need him time after time, the fact of the matter is they've rarely been in a position to have any offensive rhythm, to not have to run Riley Leonard. So can they come out of this bye week with some enhanced identity on offense, with some enhanced chemistry along the offensive line, and develop more of an identity that utilizes and also ensures Riley Leonard moving forward?
And some news from last week as we end segment one, running back Daniel Anderson from Arkansas, who's been verbally committed to Notre Dame for a long time. He decommitted from Notre Dame. That's a mutual decision. We have a question in segment two. We'll talk more about that. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Gal Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all your favorite players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season. Check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. And if you want to see it up close, check out what I'm wearing this weekend for the Stanford game. Segment two coming up, burning up the boards.
If you're coming to a game this season, you have to check out Game Day Your Way, Notre Dame's tailgate service provider. Game Day offers everything you need, including tailgate gear, catering, and even beverage delivery right to your spot. And their Irish Express transportation from Chicago allows you to tailgate while you travel to their all-inclusive party zone in South Bend. Let Game Day deal with all the hassle so you can focus on the fun. For tailgates, tickets, transportation, and more, visit GameDayYourWay.com.
Welcome back to segment two, Bring Up the Boards. Our first question from Psycho3848. Tim Priester, how did you know Daniel Anderson was not a match for Notre Dame?
I saw his junior film, and I don't, like everybody, I don't know him personally, but Kevin Sinclair and Eric Thomas have spoken very highly of him. I've seen other people have as well. And, he's been committed for a long time, but I never did a film review on him. And the reason I didn't do a film review on him was because I didn't think that the film was good enough to warrant a film review. And
Wow.
I do believe that he's gotten better his senior year. His pad level's just too high, and he has teammates that are actually getting more carries than he is. So, I wish him all the best. I hope that, I hope however the agreement came to be, I hope that it was done in a way that, he will have an opportunity to find a suitable home, but he just does not have Notre Dame level of talent at running back. And I thought that was obvious on junior film. I saw some good things of his senior film, but I should say better things, but not not enough where he warrants a scholarship from Notre Dame.
My favorite question is coming up because I wrote a whole Monday musing on it, guys. Rocket 2381. Who is the more challenging service academy for ND to beat, Army or Navy?
I'm going to let you go ahead and start that, Tim.
I believe Navy has a little bit better resume in that they've beaten Memphis. And if you want to go even farther, Air Force, Army has truly taken on the dregs of FBS society to this point. They should both be undefeated. Army will have Air Force before they have Notre Dame. Obviously, Navy has a better chance of being undefeated because they're 2 games away with a bye week. When you look at all the adjusted efficiency stats for opponents, includes opponents, these are the names you get for, all right, this is called possession efficiency, which means we do this all the time. You don't want to have 3 and outs. You don't want to have 4 and outs. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Texas. Number 5, Ole Miss. Oh, yeah. Number 3 and 4 are Navy. Drive success. That means touchdowns are better than field goals. Field goals are better than punts. Ohio State, Army, Texas, Ole Miss, Navy. Yards per play. Ohio State, Texas, Army, Ole Miss, Navy. I mean, these offenses are legit. So whoever defense, and Priest, you have some stuff on the defense for Army. Now, they only give up like 9 points a game, right? 10 points a game. But whatever defense can make Notre Dame punt a couple times, that's going to be the key in that game.
Yeah, I might give a slight edge to Army. Maybe it's just because I saw how thoroughly Notre Dame dominated Navy all over the field last August in Ireland. And Army has had a relatively super easy schedule to this point. And looking at it, they've got maybe a quasi-challenging game at North Texas right before they play Notre Dame, but otherwise it's Air Force, it's UAB, it's teams that Army should beat, will be expected to beat prior to facing Notre Dame. East Carolina being the other team, East Carolina's got its own coach on the hot seat, just a dreadful team this year. They got blown out by Charlotte over the weekend. That's a bad situation there. So Navy's turnaround is more surprising to me, considering how bad they have been the last couple of years. But I think maybe just slightly Army. But I'm still of the opinion that Notre Dame, if it is a playoff team, will handle both of those contests.
I'm really not sure which I would pick. I think they're both dangerous right now, and the turnaround for Navy is a result of the hiring of Drew Cronick as offensive coordinator. They are passing the football now. The volume of passes, it's increased, not a tremendous amount, but they are hitting some downfield passes, and they're throwing for more yards per game than Notre Dame is. So they're dramatically improved on that side. I'd say, but the better.
Had to throw that part in.
Yeah, the better. Well, I mean, it's true. When you see
true.
it, when you think, hey, are they throwing for more Notre Dame? And you look it up, and you find it. But I think defensively, Army is probably the better of the two. But as you say, Tim, the schedule has a lot of it. Navy had to play Memphis. Memphis is going to score points.
Yeah,
they scored 44 against them. But both teams Blake Horvath has done a good job for Navy at quarterback, and I really like Bryson Daly because he's a handful. I mean, he's a galloper. He can really run the football. So they're both good. I think everything that we've said between us or among us here pretty much encompasses that they're both good teams, and they're both going to be dangerous in their own way.
I'd like to add that Notre Dame playing Navy 1 week after Georgia Tech at noon in the Meadowlands is not as fun for Notre Dame's players as the Shamrock Series game at Yankee Stadium, and Notre Dame's awesome in the Shamrock Series game. I know it's not, if football's between the lines, but there's a little bit of a bump for that Shamrock Series game, I think,
agree.
For prep.
One quick thing I would note that we discussed actually this morning on the Football Scoop podcast is that now that Army and Navy are both AAC members, and they're both undefeated, they both have very solid opportunities of remaining undefeated until they meet Notre Dame. Should one of those teams beat Notre Dame, it suddenly makes itself a viable candidate for that group of 5 playoff position. So these teams already get immensely jacked up for the opportunity to face Notre Dame on a regular basis. But there is a subtext there where the game could have even more meaning
if they are able to continue these magical seasons that they've started to this point. And one quick thing in wrapping all that up is that Army and Navy always play the week after the college football
Yeah.
season ends with its championship games and everything. So in theory, Army and Navy, either one or both, could perhaps meet in the AAC championship game on December 7th, and
Oh,
then
wow.
turn around and play the Army Navy game
Oh,
on
wow.
December 14th. And then if one of them is undefeated and has secured that bid, turn around and play later in the playoffs. So it's a wild scenario, but I just bring that up to note these teams are having awesome seasons. I love it when the service academies excel, and they have even more to play for now with that AAC, American Athletic Conference affiliation.
JB, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if one of those teams beats Notre Dame and stays undefeated, I am loading up on that team in the AAC championship game because the other team's not getting a single call in that game. The AAC refs will be favoring that team that's undefeated more than you can possibly imagine. It'd be like every time Miami Hurricanes play, only to the ACC refs are out there.
I did a bye-week study. I gathered stats is what I did. Scoring, offense, 13 categories, offense, defense, and just showed where everybody was ranked. Florida State's god awful in everything that they do. They're terrible. But my favorite stat, I think, was that of Navy's 466 yards total offense, 38% is coming through the air, which you don't hear very often. Question from Jim Booney, Jim_Booney_CRS. Do you envision any current non-starters to usurp starting positions by the end of the year? For example, Chris Mitchell hasn't been productive at all. Do you think someone like Micah Gilbert or KK Smith could push into the rotation over Mitchell by year end?
Not that position. I don't think they're close to him. Micah Gilbert hasn't been playing. And I think they like Chris Mitchell more than the fans and media do. Marcus Freeman has pointed out a couple times this is a function of the offense. He's just, the ball's not coming his way. They played Chris Mitchell plenty in the last game, at least. Chris Mitchell's 6th in snaps on the team.
Here's how I would answer that question, and I'm surprised nothing was asked about it today at Freeman's presser, and I also blame myself for that. Could Jalen Sneed? He's still officially listed as a starter on the depth chart, but we know and address the fact that he appeared to leave the field before the alma mater was sung after the Louisville win. He's still listed as the starter at Rover. Could Jay Nosberry supplant him? I think that's a situation I would watch, and we'll see if Marcus Freeman's asked about that over the course of the week. But that's probably the first one that pops into my mind as a potential real possibility.
I'll ask him Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, everybody likes Osbury that watches Osbury. I hope that they can get more out of Sneed going forward, because he does have a niche. But if he wants more than a niche, then he's not gonna. That's when things get tricky, when someone wants more than the niche that they have carved out. But that was his only game where he played so few snaps. But as you guys have pointed out, we never saw him walk off the field and do that. I have no reason to doubt all the people that said it, though, and it's never a good thing to leave.
Well, then he's probably not a great candidate to get a whole bunch of snaps against the academies either, right?
Well, that's a good question. He started as a redshirt freshman in the game. It was 35-32. Okay. So he started in the game as a redshirt freshman against Navy 2 years ago. So he has seen some stuff. They made him on one of the edge guys. I don't recall how he did. I know Tui Halamaka really struggled playing Mike linebacker, but he also got the job at Mike like Friday. So it can be very hard to understand when you're a true freshman, Navy's triple option on Friday or Thursday. Next question is from Irish Dodge. What percentage of the ND fan base would you guess thinks ND will lose at least one more regular season game despite a very navigable schedule?
I had to include this question because we have to speculate about what percentage of the fan base think. Okay.
6.4.
Okay, round numbers. Do you think it's at least 3/4 of Notre Dame fans think that they'll still lose a game?
Yes.
I think it's greater than 50%.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, John. And I'm not sure
how they'll still lose a game.
Do I? I don't think you can take anything for granted with this team at this point in time. You just said it in the opening segment, T.O. If this game is tight against Stanford going into the fourth quarter, barring something cataclysmic having occurred earlier in the game,
Yeah.
then it's a failure of preparation. So I just think we have every reason to believe that Notre Dame should win all of the games remaining on its regular season schedule. We have no evidence to believe that Notre Dame will perform at a high enough level to win every single game on the remainder of its schedule.
Okay, well, let's this three-man voting media here. Yeah, yes, they'll lose. No, they won't.
Yes, they'll lose.
Wow.
A game. I'm not saying they're going 4-4. I would say I think Notre Dame's going to lose a game.
The USC's on the back end. I realize there's not a whole lot. I realize there's not a whole lot of respect for USC as they they're in a more physical conference now, and I think it's showing at times. And Notre Dame has to go out there and play. If we were talking about, if we were down to 3 or 4 games, okay, you might. There's 7, and I know that people are excluding Georgia Tech now. I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that.
I think it's good that it's in a NFL stadium and not at Bobby Dodd Stadium. I mean, I would, with 7 games remaining, I guess I would say yes. I still think they're going to lose a game, and it may be USC.
Yeah, well, I'm counting USC as a game remaining for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I
Definitely
think
at the top of that list.
I think Georgia Tech is probably the second toughest game remaining. I'm not trying to wimp out on a vote here, but I don't think Notre Dame will lose at USC if USC loses this weekend to Penn State, because then USC's season is completely over. USC is sitting here with 2 losses already. I wrote about this and discussed this on Football Scoops Pod this morning. They are a very meager, and I understand fan frustrations at Notre Dame because, again, like Alabama people are saying Kalen DeBoer is going to have to wear this Vanderbilt loss for a long time. Marcus Freeman's got to wear this Northern Illinois as part of some of the other disappointing losses for a really long time. USC, guys, in its last 20 games, do you know what the record is? I'm not even going to give you time to answer. They're 11-9 in their last 20 games under Lincoln Riley. They started 11-1, and in 20 games since then, they have the same number of wins, 11-9, and 5 of those losses have been flat out blowout losses by an average of 18 points. So they've super underachieved. If they lose to Penn State this weekend, they still have a trip to Washington. And I think if they lose to Penn State this weekend, that USC will be a completely wrecked team by the time Notre Dame gets there. So I would like to petition to vote after this weekend on this game.
Yeah. I will say Virginia only has 1 loss, but it is at Notre Dame, and it's the last home game, senior day. And I will say this about USC, and this past weekend notwithstanding to some degree, they've done a better job of keeping points down with their new defensive coordinator. They've done a better job of keeping total yards down. They're still not very good against the run. I'm looking at the stats that I looked up. They're giving up 5 yards a carry against the run, so they've still been bad there. Their passing defense is solid. They're giving up their completion percentage is terrible, so they're giving up a lot of completions. Their yards per attempt is good. These are just numbers, and numbers are numbers, but I think there are areas of their defense where they clearly are better than they have been, because they've been absolutely atrocious defensively in recent years. So they made the right move of hiring the UCLA defensive coordinator. They're making strides in that area, but they still don't know how to win. They still don't know how to win games.
Yeah.
Their schedule has been
rough.
Their schedule has been rough.
Well, yeah, it has. And DeAnton Lynn was a fabulous hire, one of the best coordinator hires in all of college football this past cycle. I'm on the record multiple places saying DeAnton Lynn's going to be a head coach. I don't know if it's going to be a power conference in college football or if it's going to be in the NFL. He's got supporters in both of those ranks for that to happen for him sooner rather than later. But USC's offensive line, which was supposed to be the best that it's had in years, has not been as dominant as it was projected or internally expected to be. And then the defense, as improved as it is, couldn't get off the field for 6 minutes or so in losing the Michigan game. And everyone knew at that point they were running the ball because Alex Orji was more one-dimensional than Riley Leonard. And then this past week against Minnesota, the Gophers Gophers uncorked a more than 5-minute drive and
Yeah.
ran it in on 4th and 1. And PJ Fleck said he didn't even think about it. He could have kicked a chip shot field goal that would have given them a lead with less than a minute to go. And he said it wasn't even a thought for him.
It was 4th and 1.
Yeah, 4th and 1, but could have kicked a chip shot field goal in
Right.
a tie game with less than a minute. And he said it was not even a thought for him. And yes, Minnesota's a tough place to play. PJ Fleck is good just about every year for one of these upsets. But let me also note, Minnesota is the team that opened its season at home with a sold-out crowd and lost to the same North Carolina team that gave up 70 points to James Madison that has been dreadful. And that's the same James Madison team that just went on the road and lost to UL Monroe. So, yes, USC has had a tough schedule, but it's not even necessarily the toughest portion of their schedule yet because they still have that Penn State game at home this week. They still go to Washington. They've got an improved Rutgers team on there. They've got Nebraska on there, and they've still got Notre Dame.
I got to tell you, I think USC might be broken by the end of the year, but the last 2 Notre Dame teams that went in there that were favored and should have killed USC. There were much better Notre Dame teams than this one. And that is a huge problem playing there. Now, those teams had Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyler Vaughns, Michael Pittman, Marquise Lee, and Robert Woods. That makes things tough. Notre Dame does not play great out at USC with the playoff on the line. I think that will be a very hard game.
What I'm concerned about is that if they still want to play by game 12, the USC defense is going to be that much better in the Anton Lynn system.
Yeah, I think if USC is still a 2-loss team at the end of the year when that game rolls around, that's incredibly bad news for Notre Dame.
I bet more than 75% of their fans think that they're going to lose another game the rest of the year. Great question, Irish Dodge. I'm just making fun, but yeah, I mean it's a pessimistic Notre Dame fandom as you look at 7 games remaining. Question from Irish Gambler. Tim, why don't you ask this because I want to respond first to this.
The Irish Gambler wonders or states that Stanford is stout against the run. Are we looking at a heavy dose of Leonard on the ground this week? Could this be a week for the tight ends to shine in the pass game?
Okay, here's why Stanford is not stout against the run. Because they held Cal Poly to 25 yards on 25 carries. And because TCU is 118th in rushing, Syracuse is 113th in rushing. And Stanford is 115th against the pass, 102nd in completion percentage. They've given up 11 touchdown pass. My point is they're so bad against the pass that teams are emphasizing throwing the football against them and perhaps not running the football against them as much. And some of those teams aren't very good. So that's one of those where you have to dig deeper into the stats and the schedule. And I will admit, I mean, I think Tristan Sinclair's a good linebacker. I think Gathan Bernadelle is. Colin Wright, their cornerback, number 6, is good. I would pick out one guy, number 4, cornerback Manley, is a guy that Notre Dame can pick on, and teams have done that up to this point. So I do think individually there's some guys there, but I don't believe that Stanford is that improved against the run. I think Notre Dame should pile up a lot of yards both ways and should score a lot of points.
From Kay Beasley, really enjoyed the articles comparing Notre Dame's rest of schedule offense and defense rankings. Seeing how poor our future opponents' pass defenses are, would you expect ND to come out throwing downfield in the first quarter versus Stanford?
Okay, tied to what I just said. I mean, I think you want to. This is a game where you want to push the ball downfield, but I think this is also a game that Notre Dame can still run the football. Notre Dame is a excellent running football team led by Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard. Jadarian Price will bounce back because he's that type of player. I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to overplay this and then see Notre Dame struggle again at home. But I think Notre Dame should be able to, for a Notre Dame offense that hasn't put it all together, this is a good opponent to be playing this weekend.
Yeah, I think we saw Notre Dame make a concerted effort to push the ball downfield more early against Louisville. They've come off of a bye week. They had some success doing that. We noted the week before against Miami that when Riley Leonard pushed the ball downfield, 3 good things happened. That was either receptions and a touchdown, a couple of pass interference penalties, or an incomplete. If you're Notre Dame, especially with this Notre Dame defense that Marcus says gives him more confidence in key situations, then you live and love all of those scenarios. So yes, I think Notre Dame has to come out and show that it's building an offensive identity and building on some progress forward that we saw in smaller steps against Miami, larger steps, and then disappeared and returned late against Louisville.
Tim, what is it's Monday, it's early in the week. None of us have predictions. I don't have yet, but what are your early thoughts on this matchup?
I think they will come and try out and try to run on Stanford with Riley Leonard and QB counter. I think the one thing that they have totally learned when they self scout is probably changing it up on second down. I was laughing at, I think his name is LT, his handle is LT Irish. He joked about Mike Denbrock's tendencies, and he said, I don't even need to do any research on these. So I started doing research, and he wasn't far off about the second and long becomes Riley Leonard's QB power run. Remember back in the Brian Kelly days when they stunk on offense, not when they were good, but it was second and 10. All right, let's hand off to Cam McDaniel. That's how it used to go. I think Notre Dame will self-scout its way out of that and take some shots downfield, but I think they'll try to run the ball on Stanford, and you can't. Riley Leonard's not going to throw it 35 times. Shots downfield and Riley Leonard running the ball and hopefully a healthy dose of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price.
Yeah. Question from.
I was just going to say the Irish have opened as about a 23-point favorite in this game. As we've noted before, Marcus Freeman has been really good coming out of bye weeks. As we noted before, Notre Dame has handled adversity better than success. And we know that they played the video of the Louisville loss from last year all week leading into the Louisville game. I'm not suggesting they're going to play the Stanford loss from 2 years ago at home, but Marcus Freeman brought it up today. It will be brought up. You can bet with the Notre Dame players this week. I expect Notre Dame to have a convincing victory on Saturday.
Question from Dude 60465. Can Riley Leonard average 200 yards passing a game for the rest of the season? He has 750 through 5 games. So that would be another 1,400 yards, almost twice as much over the last 7 games.
Yeah, I think he will. Can is different than am I guessing he will. He can, but I don't think he will.
Yeah, I would say can he? Yes, because most of Notre Dame's opponents that are poor against the pass are coming up. 5 of the 7 remaining games are against poor passing defenses. Will he? I doubt it.
I think Navy, Army, and USC will have a pass defense that would bother Notre Dame's passing offense.
In what respect with the academies?
That they're smart about it and they will make Notre Dame try to beat them with. Wouldn't you make Notre Dame try to beat you going 6 or 7 down the field on passing and not let those deep shots matter? I think there's tactical advantages there. I don't mean tactical against Notre Dame staff. I mean, look, we have to give up something. We're not going to give up the quick strike. Why don't you go to one of your 12-play drives and see if you can convert?
JB, you just flatly say no.
Yeah, look, could he? Yeah, but could I make an offer on that condo I stayed at in Jackson Hole over the weekend? Yeah, but it's not going to get accepted. So, yeah, he could. He has the talent.
Yeah.
But we have no empirical evidence to suggest that that's remotely close to happening. And I'm okay with that. If you're Notre Dame, nothing else matters. This weekend of college football shows you nothing but taking care of business matters. And Marcus has lost to Northern Illinois, as I noted. Kalen DeBoer lost to Alabama, at Alabama to Vanderbilt, which is worth noting. Vanderbilt previously had been 0-60 all time against AP top 5 opponents. So they won in their 61st game. I've dubbed it the Roger Maris game. TP is a baseball guy. You'll appreciate the significance there. But look, just handle business. And suddenly you're back in a position to handle business week by week. And if you're sitting there at 11-1, you're going to host a playoff game. Tennessee and Alabama are going to, in all likelihood, almost play a de facto elimination game in a couple of weeks because they both got unexpected losses over the weekend. Now Alabama hosts South Carolina this weekend. Tennessee hosts Florida. Then they play in Knoxville the week after that. If you're Tennessee or Alabama and you're not even to the last weekend of October and you've already got 2 losses and you got 5 weeks of season left, you're playing for your life every single week. So some really good things happened for Notre Dame this weekend. I don't care what Riley Leonard averages as long as Notre Dame keeps him healthy and Notre Dame looks like an improving team week after week. I did have the comment made to me multiple times over the weekend and again today. How much better does Texas A&M look than it did week 1 against Notre Dame, and I'm not detracting from Notre Dame, but can we sit here and say that Notre Dame looks demonstratively better today than it did week 1 against Texas A&M?
Yeah, Marcel Reed really gave them a spark. Now they went back to Wigman. Apparently he's healthy. I don't know exactly what that situation is, but I will say this. If a fully healthy or a much healthier Mitchell Evans is involved, that can make a difference in how many yards that Riley Leonard is throwing for. If he can, hook up on a couple deep balls to Chris Mitchell, you can get a big chunk of that yardage at once. A little bit more Jaden Greathouse. I don't know. The specific number doesn't matter, but I do think that there are certainly defenses here that Notre Dame can take advantage of through the air if Riley Leonard is sharp. We talk about, maybe they should play Chris Mitchell less. Well, maybe it's because the quarterback's not doing a good enough job of getting him the football.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It's like that's how they answer the question every time.
And another thing that I just thought of this, Marcus Freeman talked about Chris Mitchell today, and maybe he's not next in the progression. There's this constant. There is the narrative out there that Riley Leonard is missing open receivers. Do you know where that receiver is in the progression? Because if you don't, it can't be expected if your progression starts on the other side of the field. You can't be expected to see the guy that you say you see is wide open on a TV broadcast. But is Riley Leonard finding everybody? Certainly not. If he was, his numbers would be better. So I just, that's that you hear that all the time, that he's missing a lot of wide open receivers. If you don't know where he is in the progression or how the play is designed, it's very difficult to make that blanket statement. Tim, we're going to wrap it up here.
ND Dan 106, the bye week is often used for some self-scouting and doing a deeper dive on future opponents. What wrinkles in the offense and defense do you think we'll see now that ND has a better idea of how their future opponents are playing?
JB, what comes to mind?
Well, we've not remotely seen everything from a blitz package standpoint out of the Notre Dame defense at this rate. But we've also know that they're dealing with significant injuries, especially at the edge there. So I think could we see more corner blitzes? We've seen a couple this season. We know it can be a very effective element of Al Golden's defense. I like it. I think that as they've gained more trust in Leonard Moore, that and we see continued really good play by Clark and Hurd coming on and Christian Gray having a great year. I think that could potentially open up some things to do some more corner blitzing, because you are so really good in the secondary offensively. We've seen some growth in recent weeks. Just a little more motion, the pop passes, getting different players involved. I think that's what they have to continue to build on. Can they throw it to the backs a little bit more out of the backfield? That's something I would personally like to see a little bit more, just because those are some of the best players and most effective weapons on the Notre Dame team.
That's where I want to start, is getting the football to the running backs in the passing game a little bit more. Jeremiah Love, I don't think, has been quite as involved as maybe we were speculating. You speculate about a running back that's taken snaps at wide receiver. You don't really know exactly, how much they're going to be able to accentuate him and how well he's going to run routes, et cetera. But I will get back to Mitchell Evans, and I would think that you design a lot more for him. And while you're at it, maybe design a lot more for Eli Raridan. I don't know if you do that in 12 personnel or just him out there by himself, but I think those are a couple areas where they can explore a little bit. But really, the side of the ball where the most creativity is going to come from is from Al Golden's side of the football. He may, corner blitzes. I think that's one suggestion. May go back to some of the things that we saw in games 1 or game 2. You kind of recycle some different plans going through the season. What do you think, Tim?
They're down at third and short shots and fourth and short shots.
Yeah.
That's the biggest change for me. You can't, every time Riley Leonard runs on 4th and 2 and gains 2.5 yards, you still got to go 58 yards. So,
and I would give Marcus Freeman credit. His first couple of years as coach is having a pretty good pulse of when to do a fake kick, field goal, punt, whatever. We haven't seen that yet this year. I bet we see one over the balance of this remaining schedule.
Yeah, nobody is thinking about about James Randall taking off now that he's kicking the football better. I think that's a good call. We're going to come back on Thursday I believe that's October 10th. We'll talk a little bit more. I guess we talked a little bit more about Stanford today than anticipated, but I just couldn't help myself. Watch so much Stanford over the weekend. There's some bad football going on there, but they're a better team. And I do believe that Troy Taylor is a very good offensive coach, which is one of the reasons why I asked Marcus Freeman about him today, because I think in time that's going to continue to become a better program. Until then, please subscribe to IrishIllustrated.com if you're not a subscriber. And until Thursday, Tim Priester, Tim O'Malley, John Bryce, this has been Irish Illustrated Insider.